united tonight in this beautiful country club, let's not forget why we're here. We're here to show our support for the freedom-seeking people of Iran, who have been oppressed by the regime for over 40 years. And we're here to support a brave and dedicated person who has selflessly committed his life to bringing change to Iran. Many have said that Iran is the jewel of the Middle East, and most know that peace there would mean peace around the world. With that said, it is my honor to introduce the person who has the weight of the world on his shoulders, His Royal Highness, Reza Pahlavi.
Thank you very much, Rene, for your kind words. Anybody who has the slightest feeling to his homeland cannot be any different than I in terms of an unconditional commitment and dedication from the point of view of the duty of any patriot. I'm no different than many of you in that sense. I don't think my role is unique in the sense that we all have a commonality of purpose. And I always believe that, as the saying goes, it takes a whole village to raise a child. And if that child is our homeland, we all have to pitch in and do our share. And it becomes more a matter of distribution of tasks rather than putting the weight on one another. And you mentioned the word unity. Absolutely, I think unity is critical. I have not seen any successful movement ever overcome tyranny or totalitarianism unless the people who stood against that tyranny were shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, united. This is not a slogan, it's a necessity. And unity comes first and foremost as a result of knowing what the priorities are. Democracy is about different opinions, sometimes in conflict with one another, but living under the same roof, under the rule of law. That's why we have to have a constitution. That's why we have to have the law of the land. We are protected by those rights, regardless of our opinion. We have to be guaranteed of those rights in terms of our human and personal rights, which is what is missing in Iran today. You know, as a pilot, somebody who loves science and, of course, space, one of the most telling images that has always been vivid in my mind is a nighttime satellite picture of the Korean peninsula. And if you were to look at it, you see that right where that parallel line is that divides North Korea from South Korea. South Korea is full of lights and bright and shining in the night. And North Korea is absolutely dark. You can't even see it. To follow up on what Dr. Ganji was saying, what happened is that Iran was supposed to be today at least, if not the second Japan of Asia, but at least let's say South Korea. Instead we have become North Korea. Are we lacking the human resources? Are we lacking the natural resources? No, it's the same country. What was different? Something changed that put us on the wrong track. Having said that, from the day, at least I started, to me it was always very clear that one of the things we need to change a little bit is our own mentality and culture. You look at examples of successful countries that have become the most successful leading countries. America is certainly a good example. Why? Because from the day this country was created, people were looking ahead and not behind. The mentality in our country has most of the time been looking back. It's about time we start looking forward. Experience comes from mistakes, and wisdom comes from experience. So if you think for a moment of whatever, at least in contemporary Iran, many of us have experienced, previous generation, today's generation, frankly, it's an accumulation of experience as a result of everything we learn, good or bad, which, in my opinion, puts us in a better position today to do something much more than anything we could have imagined before. Because we have the benefit of reflection, we have the benefit of comparison, we have a whole host of experiences that even at our best we didn't have 40 years ago. And when I think of the potential that Iran has for its rebuilding, we have way more than the critical mass necessary to get it done. The expertise, the connection, the resources, everything that will take our country to be rebuilt, in my opinion, is in fact the easy part. Our challenge is to make sure that we have the basis and the principles and the essence of the values that we need to make sure is the foundation of our nation coming back from the ashes. One of the things I have also recently taken the initiative to encourage and support outside of politics and our fight for liberty and all that, which you're all way too familiar with, was the fact that I thought there was a missing ingredient in terms of people understanding what the roadmap to recovery could really be. Anybody can stand and tell you we want freedom, we want human rights, we want democracy, we want this and that. Okay, fine. But to the average person on the street, after everything is said, that person has to understand, how is it going to affect my life? How is it going to change? How is it going to give me an opportunity? When you're faced with a nation today where the youth of Iran are depressed, suicidal, want to leave the country because there's no hope and that becomes cynical, what can they build their hopes on? Not just on rhetoric, not just on slogans, but something measurable and tangible. And I think the quickest way to gain their trust and confidence that they can have a better future is understanding the roadmap to recovery. And that is really the job of people who are selfless, who don't have any dog in the fight of political power and positioning, as scientists and experts. So I came up with an organization that I've been thinking for a long time. I announced officially its creation about 2 months ago, roughly in Washington, D.C., called the Phoenix Project of Iran. The idea was to assemble a whole cast of Iranian experts and scientists so we could at least imagine for the next 50 years all the challenges that Iran will be faced with and how to deal with, from environmental issues to the water crisis, to energy, to the economy, to healthcare, you name it. And from an expertise point of view, tell people how this can be done based on projection of what Iran's revenue could be in terms of our own national production, in terms of foreign investment, and then put numbers next to it and say, with such an income, this is what we can do to improve people's lives. Not like Khomeini came and say free electricity and free water, and some people actually bought into it. No, I mean this time really explaining to people, this is how it can be done. And of course it will be the decision and the responsibility of future governments to implement or not any of these recommendations to get back on track. Now, we all know that unfortunately, if this regime had the slightest amount of care for Iranians, we wouldn't be here. But we can imagine that under a different circumstance, when you have governments that care about their own people, that place Iran first, for the welfare of our citizens, then it's a totally different story. And if people believe that they can trust their leaders and trust their, we talk about management, people who step in and confidence is built up, then cynicism turns to hope. Despair changes people. They feel that they're accounted for. They feel that they're being dealt with. Their dignity, their rights, the disappearance of any form of discrimination that we can clearly see today, all of that makes people actually want to do something for their country. If Kennedy was in Iran today and said, ask not what your country can do for you, people would say, no, forget it. It's because this country has its constitution, has its laws, has its independence, has its Bill of Rights that people, citizens in this country say, yes, I'm going to do something for my country. Can we expect Iranians to do something for their country if they don't have the slightest right to begin with as citizens? Of course not. This is where we step in. This is where we can be what makes the difference, especially those of us who enjoy the freedom of speech and opportunity to speak where people inside Iran are muzzled and silenced. If you're an environmentalist today, speak on behalf of those who have been incarcerated in Iran on the basis of being spies, and are simply environmentalists, awaiting trial and probably even execution because they've been accused of spying, just to give you one example. If you are doctors, engineers, scientists, let the Iranian people know that they are not alone. Tell them that we can prove to the world that we are capable of running our own country if only allowed. Because most of you are actually running their country for the time being. In America, in Europe, and elsewhere. Many of you wouldn't be here had it not been for the pandemic. And many of you may choose not to necessarily physically go back to Iran, but there's a hell of a lot that can be done. Today we have 8.5 million Iranians living outside of Iran as members of various diasporas. I was telling some friends, even if 0.1% of these people were able to do something immediate, the impact will be far greater than the total number of people we ever had in administration and management in our country 4 years ago. So imagine the potential. Perseverance and commitment is really at the end where we can say that light can triumph over darkness if we actually believe in it. If we actually can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time. And I know people grow frustrated or weary. But I think the way things seems to be evolving these days in Iran, there's a true opportunity to catch our second breath, so to speak. And I wanted to underline the importance of the message of hope and moral support, at the very least, that we can send back home for people who are simply exhausted and tired. They need that more than anything at this time, especially these days of hardship as a result of all the floods and all the destruction that has occurred. And frankly, I wouldn't be able to do everything that I've done all these years without people like you supporting me all these years. And I wanted to thank you for then and now and hopefully in the future, for all of us to do our part so we can have a better Iran. Belief in self and celebration of our identity should not come at the expense of being anti another culture or another race or religion. That should be part of the wisdom that I was talking about. Because blind nationalism is no better than radical thinking or a fascist regime. And we have to show that we are better than that we understand the difference, that we know how to say no, but do it with respect, do it with love, do it with principle. We are an emotional nation, but we also need to have rationality govern our thoughts so we can believe that there's a system in place that ultimately gives us those opportunities. Yes, leadership is important. I often have this debate with a lot of people. How could we get this done? We need a leader, we need this and that. I say, yeah, of course, I'm not denying that. But at the end of the day, we cannot base your hopes on individuals. We have to base our hopes on having the right system. And for the first time in history, we have an opportunity to rebuild our nation, but this time, lay the foundations right. So every bit of brain power and positive thinking is absolutely vital at this point. Any resources that we have to maximize it so that we get the best possible outcome with the least possible cost to our nation. So here we are. We have the option to make history as opposed to read history. It's up to us. you.